Hey everybody, welcome back to 12 and 12. My name is Mike Peck, and I am your journey through 2025 as we're looking at all types of different low-code and no-code tools that you as educators can learn about and then use to help hopefully solve some of the problems you have in your classrooms and schools. And so last month we looked at what I would consider custom GPT builders. We looked at two examples called Chip and Poe. If you haven't seen those tools before, I will post cards in the YouTube video down below. I will also recommend that you check out the blog posts that I've made on those tools to give you a bit more detail, like how they work. But what those tools are generally designed to do is for you as the user to give them custom instructions to some type of AI. And those custom instructions allow you to get customized outputs very quickly and easily. So it sort of saves you the time and effort of prompting an AI model to get to a certain answer. They allow you to replicate a process very quickly. So you think for things like lesson planning or creating rubrics or types of assessments, things you do repetitively throughout the year. It might take you, an extra few minutes to prompt an AI to get the certain type of result that you want. By creating a custom GPT, you can actually give an AI certain instructions. And so when you give it a specific input, it'll give you a specific output. That's a really helpful framing for, I think, the next set of tools we're going to look at. When we start working with AI tools that are actually building full applications, there are some things that are going to be very helpful to know before you really get into the deep end. But today I'm going to introduce you to a couple of those tools, both of which I have up on my screen here. One is Lovable. The other one is bolt.new. And so both of these tools are relatively similar. They do have some nuances that are worth kind of diving into at later stages. But for the purposes of today, where we're just kind of getting started with understanding what these tools are, how they work, how to use them, they're pretty similar, at least to get started with. And so I'm going to be working primarily in Lovable, but you're free to try both of these applications, kind of using the same steps or instructions, which are really quite simple. So first, you do have to sign into these applications. You can sign in with one of two things. Either like a Google account, you can create your own username and password. You can also sign in with GitHub. So if you're not familiar with GitHub, that's okay, but it's something that down the line you're probably going to want to become more familiar with if you are considering building more applications for actual distribution. So before we jump in, we're going to take a look at Lovable, and I wanted to talk a little bit about like what this does. So this application is actually going to, as it says, take you from idea to an app in seconds. And so what we see here is kind of a field, just like we saw in Bolt, is a field where we're just going to type in our prompt, and the AI is going to take the prompt and then begin to build out an application. So the AI is actually going to write all the code. It's going to generate a preview for us and then allow us to kind of interact with that code to make changes to it. Now, there's something that's kind of interesting you might see if you kind of spend a little bit of time in the no-code space, and the idea is called vibe coding. And the idea is that you don't really work off of the code base itself. You're kind of just talking with the AI model to be able to like update your site or your application that you're building. And so, for people who don't have coding backgrounds, like the tools are never getting or have never been easier to actually like jump in and get started, which is pretty cool. In Lovable, you do have some starters, just like you have in like ChatGPT or Gemini. Gives you some ideas down here below. You can attach pictures. You can also import from Figma. So if you like building things in Figma, whether they're graphic organizers or like designs for pages, you can actually import those pages directly here into Lovable, and it can actually start building an application that functions and allows those pages to actually work like a site. So before we get too deep into and actually start prompting here, one of the things I wanted to just be very clear about up front is if you're new to building applications, it's really important to consider who you're building for and what you're building. When we work with a site, you can kind of think of there are really two main parts to it. And I'm oversimplifying a little bit, but if you're not familiar with like website infrastructure design, there are two different parts. There's a front end and there's a back end. And you can kind of think of it as a restaurant. When you go to a restaurant, the front end is where you, as the person who goes to the restaurant, you sit down, you eat your food, you have servers, waitresses, waiters, people who bus tables, people who seat you, that kind of thing. On the back end is where you have all the chefs, the cooks, people running plates and things like that, people washing dishes. A site kind of works the same way. The front end is where you as the user kind of experience all the different things, like interacting with the site, maybe uploading data or information, manipulating information, that kind of thing. The back end is where all the data is stored, where authentication or login is handled, where certain functions might run. And so there are two distinct parts to the website. And especially if you start building for other people where people are logging into your system, you have to be very, very careful to make sure that you have good security practices in place. And so definitely want to make sure that as you're building here, especially as you get started, think of sites that don't require things like uploading your personal information. Logging in is a good kind of rule of thumb, something that is helpful to sort of remove from the apps that you build early on, just so you get a feel for how they work before you start adding in layers of data, edge functions, and databases that require certain levels of security to ensure privacy. So just a quick disclaimer. Now, enough talking, let's start building. So on the site, you can see just, again, how simple the interface is, but I'm going to go ahead and build an application here in just a couple of prompts, just to give you an idea how this works. But it is really, really simple, and Bolt works pretty much the same exact way. So I'm going to say, for example, I want to build a classroom management app that has some features like maybe a timer, a countdown timer. Let's do maybe a task list that allows me to add items and reorder them, and a sound, maybe like a sound expectation. Stoplight. Okay, so we have a stoplight there with like different levels of sound. And I would like the style to be warm and, let's say, educational. Okay, so here's my prompt. Now, the thing before we go ahead and launch this is, like, if you are on a free plan, you do only get so many prompts per day and you will burn through them quickly. So one of the things that I always like to say, and I just try to keep it simple here for the purposes of demoing, but when you start to think about actually building out applications, one way to make a lot of progress is to be very detailed and clear with what you want in your app. Oftentimes you might talk to a person, and talking to a person is saying, like, I wish I had an app that does this. Another person might understand context a lot more of the situation and might be more clear on like what you're describing. The AI has no idea what you're thinking about. And so being detailed is really helpful. What I like to do oftentimes is actually start with ChatGPT, kind of jam on the idea a little bit, and then take that first prompt and bring it into Lovable to get started. The other thing too, conversely, while being more detailed is better, asking it to do a whole bunch of tasks at one time can oftentimes lead to like results that don't fit exactly what you're looking for. So you got to try to find a happy medium where you give it specific tasks to do, but don't give it too many, because the more things you add in, the more likely you miss something or something gets messed up. And so let's go ahead and actually watch this. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the prompt, and it's now going to start running here in the background. Now with both Lovable and also Bolt, you're going to see on the left-hand side, there's going to be kind of like a query. It's going to talk about the different project. Here, it's actually telling me like what it's doing in the first version. So it's giving me the specific style that it's going to create. Over here, I can actually see the code base being developed, which is super cool. Now for, I think, both applications, you can actually edit the code. So if you are familiar with how coding works, how to read it. Even if in my case, I don't know how to fully read all the code that's here, but I can kind of parse through different elements and sometimes find where I need to make adjustments. The other thing you can do too, which is really cool, is I actually will use ChatGPT. So if I'm not sure what kind of code I'm reading, I actually might just take it from Lovable, copy paste it in ChatGPT and say, explain this to me. And so you can actually use different tools. Another really good one is Google's Gemini, their 2.0 live API actually it can see your screen, so you can actually talk to the AI and say, hey, like, what am I looking at? Where do I need to go to find this? And so it's actually very helpful to think about how you can sort of stack different tools to be able to go ahead and like develop different things. So right now we're looking at a bunch of code and it's still developing our final version here yet. And so while that it's actually generating over here, I can see again the different components that it's creating. Here it gave me like an idea of like what sort of things it might actually create. When you're working with Lovable, there are some features down here. So when we actually get the preview of this site, there's some things that we can do here, including doing like spot edits. So if you have like text that you want to change the way the text is worded, you can actually delete different elements, change colors. So it actually gives you some kind of like rich text formatting type things that you can edit on your own. The other thing that I like about Lovable is now I do pay for it. So a disclaimer, you can actually chat with it. And when you chat with the AI, you can actually create or get kind of like have like a conversation, and then it'll come back with a plan for you before it actually makes any edits. The last thing I'll show you here, actually a couple of things. You can attach photos. So if you want to go ahead and attach photos to the site, you can do that. It can give like as examples of like what you might want to upload or what the page to look like or elements you might want to use. And then you also have some things here too as well. We're going to talk more about these in future videos, but I wanted to actually just kind of get started with showing you what this looks like. So, all right, we have our site here. Already have a countdown timer, so I can go ahead and adjust the minutes. Looks like I can probably go ahead and I can type in there. So what we actually get is like a working prototype, which is super cool. So I hit start timer. There we go. It's actually counting down for us. So I now have this working classroom companion app. Down here, I have my task list. So I'm gonna, oops, add task. Cool. And I can actually bump these. The really cool part is, and you don't know this, but I actually created an app a while ago that was kind of like the exact same idea. And the output right now is like 100 times better than the first time I actually did this. Just on the first strike here is pretty good. So now you can see you can actually strike them. We can reorder them. That is super cool. Here we have our little thing. Okay, so we have like this working application now. You can actually go ahead and use this straight away. If you want to look at a preview, there's this little preview button here, both for the web version and also for mobile. And if you're excited with this, it works great for you. You can go ahead and hit publish. And publishing it allows you to use this. So I would just use this warm-classroom-companion.lovable.app. And you can go ahead and like log in and actually use it in your classroom. So that's literally how easy it is to build an app. Now you'll notice there is no like logging in. It's not collecting any information. There's no database behind this to manage it. And so it's a pretty simple tool. But for me, if I'm running a classroom where I have kids doing like center exercises and I want something like, this is really cool. Now I can make edits to this. Here we can see, oh, it's actually, this is super cool. It's actually giving me some recommendations. Okay. All right. So maybe we'll add, can we add some animations to this? using, so I'm going to use what's called p5.js, which is like it's a library of different like animations essentially that can be added to a page. And so I'm going to ask it to go ahead and throw some in, but keep the layout readable and make sure the images or the tools are still unaffected by the animations. All right, so we'll just do that. It's now going to go ahead and make some edits to our page, and it might take a couple moments, so because it's going to have to add this new library. So here we go. So as you can see, it's kind of working. If you want to, you can view. So if I go back to dev mode here, you can see I have all of the different components. And again, this is the part where you can actually go ahead and make edits to the page. But I'm going to keep this in our preview panel so you can see it's working over here. One of the other nice things that I think this is in both Bolt and also Lovable is you do have the ability to restore. So if like it does something and it's kind of like you don't like it, or perhaps it misses the mark, you can always restore to a previous version of Lovable. So I asked for some different animations, and I didn't get a whole lot. So I did see, oh, here we go. Our classroom companion was jumping. So like lesson learned, right? I asked it to include some animations. I was not clear at all like what to add or where to add it. And so we got that. Although it did do a good job of not like affecting the rest of the components, it just gave like a very minimal kind of animation for us. So, and that's it. That's like all it takes to like start building. So I wanted to just at least jump in, show you how this tool works. Again, bolt.new, pretty much exactly the same. One of the nice things is if you are new to this space, like they do have a built-in prompt enhancer. So if I type my idea in and hit prompt enhance, it kind of works the same way like iterating with ChatGPT does before you actually put your prompt into Lovable. It's actually going to look at the prompt and say, okay, well, here's what I think you want me to build. And it's going to give you very specific things. And then once you approve that prompt, it's going to go ahead and then build it. It's going to give you more detail and more, it's going to put things in a language that the AI can make more sense of. And so that's all it takes to get started. Now, there are going to be some future videos we put together in the series where I talk about how to build using a database. So for both Lovable and Bolt, you can use Supabase directly integrated, which makes it super easy. And then also we're going to look at some of the things you want to consider when building for security measures, like what are the types of things you want to be watching for? What are processes that help you kind of speed run building your applications, things that I've learned along the way. And so what I encourage you to do is go out and start playing with these tools, and I'll catch you in the next video.